Hello, everybody, and welcome to the SoxProspects.com podcast, the web's number one source for information on the Boston Red Sox from top to bottom, from Fort Myers to Worcester, across the Pike to Fenway, and all stops in between. Thank you all for listening. My name is Chris Hatfield. I am the executive editor of Sox Prospects, joined, as always, by our director of scouting, Ian Kundle. Ian, it is December. It is freezing here in my basement studio. But that said, the hot stove hopefully about to warm us up a little bit here with the winter meetings about to start. We got a lot to talk about.
Yeah, it's been a pretty quiet off season so far, but I think hopefully, as you said, with the winter meetings getting going next week, we'll see some movement finally and start getting a clearer picture of what the direction of the off season is for the Red Sox and other teams.
Mm-hmm. And importantly as well, we just came out with our end of season rankings. We've got a new number one prospect at the top of the list. So we're going to talk all about the end of season rankings, of course, and your questions you can send to podcast@soxprospects.com because we want to talk about what you all want to hear about. Before we get going, a couple of pieces of business. First of all, you can support the show by rating and reviewing us on iTunes, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, anywhere it is that you listen to the show. Support us on patreon.com/SoxProspects. Pledge a certain amount per episode, get some neat perks, get some behind the scenes info on the new rankings, for example, who the prospects at 61 to 70 were, who we all had individually in our top 30s, things like that, some neat behind the scenes info and things like that. So hit us up there. And of course, spread the word. Best way to support any podcast or any work of art or anything like that, anything you hear, anything you watch on TV, is to spread the word. So tell a friend, tell a neighbor, tell your bus driver, tell the person who cuts your hair, whatever it is. Let them know about the show. We'd appreciate it. But Ian, let's jump right into it. I guess I feel like we usually shuttle the rankings off to the back of the episode. I propose, since it's the end of season rankings, why don't we start with the rankings? Because these are big. We've got a new number one, and we had a few shakeups in the top five and throughout the rankings, actually. So I think that's probably where we should start. I think that's probably what people want to hear about most. Biggest one, Ian, is we got a new number one. We made the switch of Roman Anthony, jumping him over Marcelo Meyer. I picked that wording on purpose. So I guess you tell me. I've been answering this on radio hits and stuff this week, but what's your take on Roman Anthony as the new number one over Marcelo Meyer and that decision process for you or all of us or what have you?
I think for me, it comes down to comfort with the hit tool, and I just think there's some red flags in Meyer's offensive profile that have not really improved as he's gone through the org. And I think you kind of contrast that with Anthony, who has not really had those issues and has pretty much gotten better as he's faced better pitching. Last year, as he moved up the ladder, he was more
and that's
successful.
Not just the OPS type stats. This is like
underlying stuff. Yeah. So for me, it's just it all comes down to that. I just have questions about Meyer's hit tool long term, and I think there's enough red flags there, especially when you combine it with his injury history, which is starting to become a thing now. And the other thing being that I have more confidence in Anthony's ability to stay up the middle than I did entering the season. That I think that it made sense to flip them, because I see more upside with Anthony also. I think Meyer, he's still going to be a very good player, and he's got a chance to be a really good player. But it's, when we're looking at two up the middle guys, Meyer potentially above average to plus defender at short, Anthony, same thing in center field. You kick it to the plate, and I think Anthony is a pretty clear advantage there.
Mm-hmm. And it's funny because they're both young. I mean, it feels like Meyer is so much older, but Meyer, I guess, is only like a year older.
Well, no, yeah, they were one draft apart. So
yeah, but it just feels like Meyer has been around for so much longer for whatever reason. I mean, it's just one season, right? But yeah, I mean, they're at the same level, and it's tough. The thing with Meyer is that, do you just throw out everything from Portland? Right, because he was hurt the whole time. But it's just, even if you do that, just looking at the high A numbers, like Roman Anthony saw like more than half a pitch per at bat in high A. They have very similar in zone contact rates, but like Meyer chases a lot more. Anthony hits the ball a decent bit harder. They both hit the ball hard. there's some things, Meyer might be a little better against off speed, at least, or he was at that level, but there's just more.
Well, no, Meyer's never hit breaking balls.
Yeah, well, the spin. I'm saying changeups.
He's struggled again. I don't like that stuff though. I think for me, it's just that even when Meyer was successful in high A, and you have to remember that a lot of that damage was buoyed by a Nashville series where he just destroyed the ball, and playing in Nashville is like playing in a little league field. But there's just some approach things there. I think that's the biggest thing. I don't know how well he does recognize spin. And as you said, yeah, like chase rate, he's got a below average chase rate already. Anthony's has been, plus to better throughout his entire career. And even moving up from high A to double A, it didn't change. Those are the kind of markers that I'm looking for. You look at like pitches per plate appearance. It gives you a good idea of what they're doing, from at bat to at bat over the course of their seasons. And Anthony saw more pitches at every level. Meyer saw more pitches in double A also, but it's still a number that's below average. It's things like that. It's very nitpicky because they're both excellent prospects, but
sure.
I just think that the offensive upside that Anthony has just really tilts it in his favor for me. And I think that's why, I think they're probably both top 20 prospects in all of baseball, but I think Anthony would be closer to 10 for me, whereas Meyer might be in like the 15 to 20 range. But it's 1A.
Depends
1B.
on who's around them. Yeah.
It's a 1A, 1B situation. It's not a 1-2. I don't think that's a good way to look at it, in my opinion.
Yeah. And I think, a lot of people seemed, at least on Twitter, which is never really a good gauge, I guess, of the general population, but like, a lot of people took it as like, oh, here goes Meyer's descent. It's like, no, like we would have been perfectly happy with Meyer as the number one prospect.
Well, it wasn't even consensus. Like,
no, it wasn't. And even those of us, like, did any of us say like, yes, slam dunk Anthony? Like, there's no convincing me. There's no argument. No, we all knew it was a discussion.
Yeah, it was a discussion, but I just think that
we all felt comfortable with where we went.
Yeah, when you dig into the data deeper and just look at the scouting reports, I would lean Anthony, but as I don't know if I talked about it last time, but I mean, I talked to a bunch of scouts about it, and it was a pretty close to 50-50 split about who they would take. I think Anthony had a slight edge, but it wasn't overwhelming. And so, I mean, I think it shows, even talking to people who have to write these guys up for their organizations, it was a split camp. So I think, yeah, you can't go wrong with either. They're both excellent prospects, but I just think Anthony has more upside. I think, when we're talking about guys at that level, I want to be chasing stars. And I think Anthony has a better chance to be a star than Meyer does.
I think that's a good way to put it. Because even before, we would always be like, Meyer, it's a sum is better than the whole of its parts type thing. It's not like there's some carrying tool.
It's a bunch of it. Like when you look at Meyer, it's the chance, you're looking at a bunch of 50s and 55s. Whereas I think, and with Meyer, his best tools will probably come on defense. I think you could go plus on the defensive tools, but at the plate, maybe you're looking at like a 50 hit, 55 power. Whereas Anthony, I think, has a chance if, everything breaks right. I think that he's got a chance for, some 60s on the offensive side, and while still being up and above average to plus defender also.
Right. That makes sense. Meanwhile, looking elsewhere in the top five, we had another kind of tier of guys that we had I think by the time we got to the actual ranking process, we'd all been thinking through the 3 to 5 guys enough that there wasn't a whole lot of debate. Maybe a little less than I expected we might have. Kyle Teal at 3, Cedar Rafael at 4, Miguel Blaze 5, which basically reverses the order they were in our last rankings. Teal jumping from 5 to 3. Talk a little about that, because I think, to me, we've talked plenty about Rafaela. There was at least one response to our new rankings of surprised they rank Rafaela at all with the way they talk about him on the podcast, which, I kind of hate, because it's like, look, we have to point out if a guy has warts, right? Especially if they're at the major league level, they're in AAA and they're getting called up. Blaze, we've talked about the fact that he missed the year with the shoulder, but even before he went down, there were, some concerning things.
He was very bad in spring training.
Yeah, he wasn't bad. He wasn't good in spring training, and he wasn't great in Salem either, honestly. No. And there was hope that he would figure it out because he was getting fed a steady diet of breaking balls. But even fastballs he wasn't even doing a whole lot with.
No,
honestly.
But I do wonder how much of it we don't know when he originally suffered this injury. So
he did, yeah, because he did didn't he missed a week, came back for 2 games and hurt himself again.
Yeah.
So yeah. I mean, look, part of developing as a player is learning when to tell the team that, hey, I'm hurt and I can't play, because like they can't tell you if you can't play. You've got to tell them if you're hurt. So yeah, Blaze at 5, I think was easy. Rafael Atiel, there was some debate, because to me it's like proximity, but even like the proximity is not even that great because Teal got to AA. So
yeah, I honestly, I didn't even debate it. I thought Teal was clearly 3. I just think that the bar for catcher is so low, and when you've got a guy who has the chance to hit and be a solid defender, that's just extremely valuable in this day and age. And I think that Teal has that high floor because of his defense, and he's got upside with the bat. Rafael obviously is also the defense first guy, but I just like Teal's bat more than I like Rafaela's.
Yeah, I mean, we saw the warts for Rafaela exposed. I mean, it was a consistent 39 to 40% chase rate all year.
Yeah, it's what we warned about. He did exactly what we warned about. And I understand, as people have said, we talk negative about it, but you know, we're not going to sugarcoat it. If we think a guy has some issues, we're going to point them out. And that's exactly what happened at the big leagues. And now it's on him to adjust to it. Could he? Sure. But it's hard when throughout your entire career, you've been, you know, a 40, 30, 38, 40% chase rate guy. It's hard to just switch that overnight. And so that just might just be who he is at this point. And if that's the case, then yeah, that's not a top 3 prospect in the system.
I thought it was telling, you know, Alex Spear, friend of the show, his top 10 in the system got released today by Baseball America, and he did a chat. He got multiple questions about Rafaela. And, you know, one of them was like, well, Bo Bichette, and was Tatis the other guy they were comparing him to? And he was like, but they didn't chase like this. Like it's a different.
There's a small list of guys who chase like he does and can be successful, and a lot of the guys who do it are aliens. Like you don't comp guys to that. You know, I think like Michael Harris is one of them. Michael Harris is a very unique player who he makes it work. You know, there are guys that can make it work, and that's why Rafael is still inside, you know, the top 5. But it's just it narrows your paths to being a successful player, and because of his defense, he can still be a very good utility player, even if he doesn't hit at all, really, because defense matters. But his paths to being an everyday, you know, a 50 or above are narrowed because of his approach. And we saw it last year. It's just a bad combo when you expand the zone and don't hit the ball hard consistently. That's a really dangerous combination. And I think we talked about it. Was it the last episode when we talked about him versus Abreu? That's, you know, when you look at that, I think this, like, you know, StatCast data isn't be all end all, but when you look at their 2 Baseball Savant pages, there's a lot of red on Abreu's and not a lot on Rafaela's page. And that's the kind of things that scare me with him.
Yep. Yeah, for sure. And I mean, maybe that probably leads us to Abreu, because to me, you know, we have Nick York 6, we have Luis Perales 7, just to fill out the top 10. It's Perales 7. Both of those guys stayed put. Wheeler Abreu moving up from 12 to 8. Followed by Wickelman Gonzalez at 9 and Yoelan Cespedes at 10. Nazan Zanatello falls from 9 to 11. So Cespedes stays put, but with, you know, Abreu passing him, Zanatello, you know, going beneath them. But Abreu was just a weird one for me to rank, because it's like, just based on what he did at the major league level, you had to move him up. Never mind AAA. I mean, what more do you need to see out of him? Obviously, a larger sample, but you know, we, like you said, we talked about him versus Rafaela last episode. And to me, like, especially for this season, if you had to pick which one between Abreu and Rafaela helps the major league team more this year, do you hesitate before saying Abreu?
No, I think it's Abreu, and I don't think it's close. And this is where I think it's hard. There are some limitations in the way we're doing it, where you actually have to rank everyone versus just doing it by tiers. Because if I was to tier things out in the system, I would have top 2, then 3 would be a tier. And then I think 4, 5 is kind of like a tier, like 1A of a tier. And then the second part would be York, Perales, Abreu, Gonzalez, Cespedes. I think that's like the second part of that.
And Cespedes is like, he's got a handhold on that tier. Like, he's on it, but it's like, he's clearly the last one on that tier. Just based on,
but he also has a chance to be, by the end of spring training next year, in the top 5 in the system.
Oh, sure. Well, let me put it this way.
Like,
Next number one prospect in the system is the other than Anthony or Meyer. I think it's probably like,
well, it's Blaze
Teal, Blaze.
Well, no, because I think Teal will. I think Teal gets the big leagues before Meyer does. So I think Teal's going to graduate by that. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Interesting. I don't know that I agree, but that's interesting.
Well, I don't think that's controversial at all. Meyer and Teal both reached AA next year. One is a college guy who was healthy the entire season. The other's a high school guy coming off an injury who barely played.
Because Teal has half a season of.
Who cares though? Baseball. Just look at their age. He's older than Meyer, and they're both at the same level.
I get that he's older, but he's only had half a season. I mean, he's got what? Let's see, Teal.
But I don't care. But I don't think
Teal doesn't. He has like 100 professional plate appearances.
No, I know, but I don't think you can use that as a barometer anymore. Like Meyer,
I'm happy to. If Meyer comes back next year healthy and performs, he easily could get to the majors before Teal. Because Teal's got to catch. Of course, Teal's got to learn to catch.
Of course, he could. I would if I had to pick between the two of them, who is more likely? I think it's Teal, and I think it's like.
I understand what you're saying, and I'm saying I would go Meyer personally.
And that's crazy to me.
I don't think it's crazy at all. Because if he comes back healthy, shows that a big part of why he wasn't performing last year was the shoulder injury, and he performed like he's the one that of him, Anthony and Teal is most likely to get promoted to AAA first. I think.
Oh no! I could not. No.
Why not? I mean, look, if they all come back next year, right? We're looking at this. Hold on. We're looking at the same. We're looking at the same spreadsheet.
If they all come back next year, and let's say they're all incredible, I would rank them in order of likelihood to be promoted: Teal, Meyer, Anthony. I think Teal is the first one to go up, and I don't think it's that controversial or close.
Really?
Yes,
just because of you're telling like physical, like human age.
He's a college guy.
It's 21 versus 20 versus 19.
But he's a 3-year college guy who is. If he shows that he can hit, like the defense is a defense, it's going to be good. Just get him to AAA immediately and start working with pitchers who are going to be in the big leagues. Like the Meyer has had injuries. Let's be honest, he was horrific in AA last year. Granted, the injury was, I think, a majority of it.
Sure.
They're going to slow play that. You're not going to rush Marcelo Meyer to the big leagues. Whereas Kyle Teal, he's a college kid. Who cares? Just push him quickly. Like, just get him up there. I think the way development is flipping with college kids, you can't look at the normal development paths and treat them the same as a high schooler. Like, look at the Angels called the college guy up to the majors already last year.
Yeah.
If you told me Kyle Teal was in the majors next year, would I be surprised? No. Like, and
I'm with you on that. 100%.
No, I think thinking that a high school kid who was injured for the majority of last year, or not the majority of last year, let's say half of the season, and if they both perform similarly, I don't think it's that close. I think Teal is the more likely to get up to AAA quicker next season.
All right. Even though it's not even a full year of age difference.
I just don't care about that anymore, though.
You're just saying college background versus.
I just think that
the extra 2 years in the farm system.
Yeah, I don't think that matters anymore because they're pushing guys aggressively now. Where I just don't think you can say, well, this guy finished at this level. What does that mean now? Because the old school like promotion, like earning promotions that we're used to, just doesn't apply anymore. The minor leagues are just not as good as they used to be, and teams don't care about that stuff anymore. They're not looking for on-field performance. They're looking for, I think.
I know they're not looking for on-field. I'm saying so like, look, put it this way, like equalizing quote unquote performance. And when I say performance, I mean like, maybe they don't have the exact same.
But if you're equalizing for performance, I think
Let me finish.
Yeah, okay.
If we're equalizing like, like roughly similar, like I'm not saying take Meyer's chase rate and make it Teal and Anthony's, which theirs is basically the same. That's not what I'm saying. Right. But it's like, look at what Teal did in AA, like exit velos below 100, like hard hit rate, half of what Anthony and Meyer did. Like I mean, it was 39 plate appearances. You can't read anything. But that's what I'm saying. It was 39 plate appearances, but that's literally my point is we have no basis.
Well, but the point is
if
that
he comes out and does at the plate what Anthony did at AA, like, go ahead. I'm with you 100%.
But that was the exercise. We're saying that they all perform similarly well. Who is getting promoted first? It's the college guy. It's Teal. It does. To me, it doesn't matter when you enter the system anymore. It's just about, it's when you look at the backgrounds of who's going to take longer to develop, it's obviously going to be the high school guys.
Well, I'm saying if we now, I get what you're saying about, I don't care about background, but I'm saying if we're narrowing it to the top prospects in the system, right? These top three guys. I'm not saying like Blaze Jordan or Mike or, who else would be at that level? Maybe a Hickey versus a Teal. Like that's different. That is, don't care about background. The fact that Hickey's been around versus Teal, like, push Teal. I get that. But I'm saying you've got a guy in Meyer who, Teal and Anthony were in AA for a month. Meyer was in AA from like what, June, July, August. I guess it's not that much longer even.
No, right. Meyer. I mean, just look at the play appearances. Meyer got 190 PAs in AA.
Yeah, versus 40 and 39, 44 and 39.
So you got 150 more. So that's basically what, a month? It's about a month more.
No, that's a month and a half or so.
Okay, whatever, 6 weeks, let's say. So I think that's negligible. And so
that's okay. I feel that. Interesting. Okay. I just think with Meyer, especially versus Teal, maybe less so versus Anthony, but with Teal, you've got a guy who, as we're talking right now, has never been in a spring training, has never been in a full minor league season. No, I'm just saying, when you're talking about guys who are in this comparable sort of tier.
But what is the difference if he's in AA or AAA? I don't think there's any difference to him for how he handles himself. You know what I mean?
Let's see what he shows you. And I guess with what we're saying is if the performance is the same.
Yeah. The idea is,
I guess it depends what the performance being the same is. Like if they're all not good, then that's different.
Well, no, we're saying they're all good. I mean, if they're going to get promoted, they're warranting a promotion.
Exactly.
But yeah.
So interesting.
I don't think you rush Meyer. Whereas Teal, who cares? Teal is much closer to a finished product than Meyer Anthony is.
Teal, because of the defense.
Well, he's a college guy. Like there's just not.
He's a college guy, but
there's not as much upside there. He is what he is, and I think teams are starting to realize that with those college guys, what good is it? Getting them at bats against AA pitching, like or low A, high A pitching. They're not really.
That's what I'm saying. We've got them in AA.
Yeah, just get them to AAA and then figure it out.
See, I think it's get them to AA and figure it out, and I guess that might be where I feel a little different because I think. Although they pushed Drohan so damn fast last year too.
Yeah, he was a college guy versus you look at.
He had been in the system since 2020. That's a little different,
right? But I'm saying that he was pushed up after 34 innings in AA last year.
He barely pitched.
Whereas you look at some of the other pitchers, like, Wickelman. I guess he didn't start there. He obviously earned that promotion, but sorry, one just trying to find this number. Yeah, but if you look, like he had 48 innings in AA last year. That's more than Drohan did, and they didn't do like a cursory promotion to AAA to end the season or anything. Like, I just think that when you have college guys, you just handle them differently because I just don't think Teal's. Yeah, as I said, I think the biggest thing is Teal's just a lot closer to a finished product than someone like Anthony or Meyer is. They both have a lot to work on, whereas I think Teal kind of is what he is. And obviously he still has development remaining, but I think that if we're putting everything, more or less the same with performance and everything, he's the one who's going to get promoted first.
All right. I respect it. I get where you're coming from. I see that argument 100%.
Yeah. But I think going back, that was
how did we get here?
But going back to the tier thing, my point was simply that I think that you could rank York, Perales, Abreu, and Gonzalez in any order. Like you could just, I would not argue with them in any order. If you told me Abreu was 6, I strongly consider doing that. You tell me Perales is at 6, sure, that's fine. You tell me you like Gonzalez at 6, fine with that too.
Yeah.
Like I just think that I think those guys are all in the same tier to me, and it's just a matter of personal preference with what it comes to. Because I think they all have warts, they all have really good positives, and it's just how do you weigh those things? And I think that differs from person to person.
Yep. And I think it's a big drop from Cespedes to Zanatello.
Agree. Right, I think that's a pretty substantial drop.
Yep. Agreed. I mean, we've got Zanatello as far as a projection grade, like at a 4.5 with that tier, but I still think there's a drop to him.
Yeah.
Like he's a 4.5 because we've got a hedge based on with the data we have.
He's a 4.5 because he's barely played. Yes. And we're just going off of amateur stuff. He's 38 professional appearances. Yep. There's no instructs data or anything. That's one that is very fluid and will be largely dependent on what we see in spring training and the reports we get out of there. And then early in the season. Yeah. And then what he does in the first couple of months in St. Louis, I would assume.
His data in the very small sample size was not good.
No, but I mean,
but again, it's a small
scout feedback wasn't good
either,
but he's also an 18-year-old who's pretty raw at the plate, going to
I guess he didn't chase much in the FCL.
He also got to Salem, I think, right?
Yeah, but what does that even mean now? I mean, exactly. I think he got to Salem like a little bit before the FCL season.
Well, but no, that was going to be my point. Is like he got to Salem while really struggling. Like, who knows? Yeah. Because I think, to me, I feel good about the top 10 guys in the system. I'll be honest, don't love the next 10.
Yeah,
I think 10, it drops off pretty substantially.
It does. It really does. Because if we've mentioned the top 10, and I guess moving on down, then the next group is Nazan Zanatello at 11, Chase Mydroth at 12, Alan Castro at 13, who I might like better than both of them. I don't know.
Yeah, I almost put Castro. I had Castro at 12. I almost put him 11.
I almost moved him up too. But Johan Fran Garcia at 14. And then I think there's a drop between those four and Shane Drohan at 15, who we probably need to discuss a little bit.
Yeah.
Those four, it's a top 10, it's a top 14. And
well, but I'm almost not sure Mydroth. I don't know what to do with him.
I don't know what to do with him either. Can you impact the baseball at the AA level? And he's going to have to show it pretty quick this year. He's going to start falling too. Like a lot of guys who get to that AA level. Because the thing is with Mydroth, he gets to AA, he's still not missing in the zone at all. Like borderline elite level in zone contact rate.
That's a great approach, but who cares if you can't make pitchers pay? Like we've seen this over and over again where those guys get to the majors and pitchers are like, oh, you're 5'8". And it's like, do you know like too small meme that you see in like the NBA all the time now? It's where you put your hand and you're basically just saying the person who's guarding you is too small. Like that's what pitchers are going to do to him in the majors. It's like, okay, great. You didn't swing at a pitch just off the plate. I'm going to throw a 97 mile per hour fastball at your belt.
Up the gut. Yeah.
Yeah. And what are you going to do with it? Oh, you're going to hit a flare single to center field. Okay. That's fine. Whatever.
Yeah.
Like, cool.
Because you're not a burner and you're not going to steal second.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's why he's such a weird player, but his approach is like elite. So it's like, how do you balance that out? And
he's
just a weird player.
And the defense thing is weird. I still don't.
He's fine. He's nothing special. But yeah, it's a very interesting profile. And it's why, I think he's someone, as you said, that I have him lower right now. But again, it's everyone in this area has question marks.
Yeah.
And to me, it's just, I think that to me, the names to watch in this are Castro, Garcia to me. I think they're the ones who, if you had to ask me who are the guys who could push into the top 10 next year,
Castro,
it's
question.
them. Yeah. Yep.
I like Castro a lot. I like what I saw him a decent amount this year with Salem.
He was excellent when I saw him in Greenville too. I thought I was very impressed with what he did in Greenville.
I like him. Switch hitter. There's nothing in the profile that necessarily jumps off the page. I mean, he was hitting the ball really hard at low A, and that's why they got him up to high A. But everything is it's good, and he's young. He's 20. He's not 18, but it looks good. I like it.
And I also like though that when he moved up, it didn't really change. The underlying metrics didn't really change, and that's something that I really think is valuable. Is if you're someone who you do a certain thing at a level and you move up a level in season and can do that still, that's really encouraging to me. That's. Yeah, because there are guys that's not the case. There are guys who make that jump and it's like, oh wow, that's a problem. Like I can't, I didn't chase it against high A or low A breaking balls, and now I'm in high A and I'm just chasing everything. That's concerning. Whereas if someone like Castro, it went up a little bit, but nothing outside of the margin of error. So it's like that's fine.
And the numbers against left-handed pitching went way up.
Yeah,
went up too.
I think I'm left.
Some of
right
that sample
splits,
size always. Yeah, left right splits in the minors.
It really weird because imagine teams facing the Red Sox. The Red Sox have zero lefty starters.
I know.
You're gonna have team. I guarantee you there were position players on the opposing teams last week who played Red Sox affiliates and didn't see a single lefty the entire week.
Last week.
And what? No, the entire week.
Oh, got it. Yeah.
Didn't face a lefty.
Yeah, in the low minors. Yeah, they had nothing.
So it's what is that?
Who even are you facing?
So it's if I'm a hitter, if I'm a 19-year-old hitter and I see two lefties in a 2-week stretch, what am I learning from that? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's why I just think it's really hard.
Another reason you got to push guys.
Yeah, it's really hard to judge
lefties that are good.
That's why it's really hard. Left right splits are really hard to kind of determine how much. Yeah. So
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah.
That tier of guys, they're very, very different players, but they are definitely, I think, ahead of, there's that Drohan at 15, who's kind of the divider. And we talked about him a lot with the, in our last episode when he wasn't protected. With where he is now, I think it's a reflection of how much the stuff backed up in AAA. I mean, it's not results based. It's not based on him not getting added. It's
no.
We take the opportunity, and I probably should have mentioned this in leading into this segment. When we do end of season, start of season, and to maybe a slightly lesser degree mid season, at least personally, I try to make sure, and I think we all do, make sure that inertia is not keeping a guy in a spot. Like it's a reevaluation of guys looking at a body of work as opposed to like what's changed in the past month. Have we gotten new reports? Did I not pick up on something? Fine. But like it's a reevaluation of the full profile. And that's why you get things like Abreu from 12 to 8. Drohan falling, I mean, just 13 to 15 this month, but like from where he was at his peak, during the year, he peaked at like 5, I think he got to. Where is it? Let's see. Yeah, he peaked at 5. He was at 6 in our July ranking. Right. And it's just, then we get out and see him and the stuff is not the same as where it was in Portland. So I think he's kind of a divider between that and the next group again of a lot of position players, which is what this system's got a ton of. 16, 17, 18, 19, all position players, Nathan Hickey, Edinson Paulino, Mikey Romero, Blaze Jordan, and the top 20 gets rounded out by Yordan Monegro, who I think is kind of another divider, maybe. That group just does not, like, they're fine. Like, but they all have huge warts. Like Hickey, I don't know what position he's going to play, right? Like,
yeah.
Is he a catcher? Huge question mark. Paulino, the defense is pretty good, but
he does, but no, it's the question with Paulino is what does he do well enough to carry himself to the majors? Yeah. And he's very small.
Doesn't hit the ball hard.
He's a good defender, but yeah, he doesn't hit the ball hard. He doesn't really hit lefties. He's just a good athlete who can play shortstop. And that matters.
Okay this year.
I know,
but the split was about the same.
That's a concern when he gets up.
Okay.
But it's one of those things, he does the athletic. He has the athleticism, the defense, which is something teams obviously are looking for, but that's usually not enough. You got to do something else well, whether it be you have power, you're a contact guy. And I like the adjustments though he made at the end of the season at the plate and that he finished really strong. So that was why he's someone I think I had a little higher than the consensus. Or no, you did too. Yeah, we were actually, I guess we all were. I think the two to talk about in that list you just talked about there are Jordan and Monegro.
I would mention Romero too, frankly, because
Romero's just like shruggy face. I don't know.
Well, the thing with Romero is he's a guy that you picked in the first round. Granted, you gave him a smaller bonus than Anthony, but like he just didn't show anything last year. And granted, he was hurt for a lot to start the year. He was hurt at the end.
Scout feedback was not great on him. I mean, obviously, very few people saw him because of how much time he missed, but
yeah, I mean, he got a total of like 140 plate appearances, including, 30 that were in the complex league on a rehab assignment.
Yeah.
Why he got moved up to Greenville, I don't know.
But that's what we were talking about again when we were debating like the Meyer thing is I just think you can't look at promotions anymore. It just doesn't mean the same that it used to.
Oh, I'm not saying a promotion is a data point. Sorry. It's to me, it's just like, it's not like a situation where I got, push him. Like I just didn't get pushing him. I don't know. Maybe it's just me.
Well, wouldn't it a playing time thing?
Because I guess in part, but it was, it's like Ravello.
Coffee.
No, Coffee was already in Greenville.
Oh, was he? Okay.
Yeah, which was another one that like, he did not look good in Greenville either. I mean, Mikey Romero in Greenville, it's 10 plate appearances, so you can't really make a whole lot of the data.
It was going to be a lot more than that, though. He did get hurt. Like the only reason it was that.
That's true. Well, no, but that's what I'm saying is like in the 10 plate appearances he got, again, maybe he was dinged up and, shouldn't have been there for health reasons. Maybe that's the problem. But it was to make playing time for like Luis Ravello, Marvin Alcantara, and like Zanatello, who wound up not actually playing a whole lot at that level, if at all.
Well, no. He was promoted long before Zanatello was in the picture.
Was he?
Yeah.
Zanatello was in the system. I mean, he was coming. He was promoted after the draft.
Right, but he was promoted to Greenville on August 15th.
Yeah, and the draft is in July. I'm saying Zanatello's in the system, and you're eventually going to be moving him up to Salem.
But those guys didn't get moved. Those guys don't get moved up to Salem until like September. So I don't know. I just think Zanatello got promoted, or I don't even know if this is going to be on his MILB page actually, because he didn't play. But no, he did. He was promoted September 11th. Oh no, I guess August 23rd. Yeah, I guess it was. Yeah. It was about a week later.
Oh. Yeah.
Oh, because I forgot the FCL season ends super
early.
It
ends super early. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So that's why it's like, the FCL season ended on August 22nd.
Yeah, so it was about a week before he got promoted to Greenville.
So that's why it's like,
and I guess you are preparing.
He was already on the 7-day injured list in Greenville when Zanatello got promoted, but
he
would have had about a week of plate appearances. So yeah, it's weird. But yeah, I mean, Romero, I just don't know what to think, because he was a guy who we were talking about last year as a guy who, like, if the swings there was really interesting, and he just didn't get a chance to show it.
When he's one of the few guys in the system I've still not seen. He was injured in spring training, and then he didn't play any of the affiliates when I was there. So that's
true. Did I see him last year in Salem?
I don't think you did. I don't think any of us saw him. I think he's someone.
No, I think I saw him for a game or two in Salem.
Maybe, but I don't know. I didn't see him, so it's just really hard for me to like judge guys like that when I didn't see him, and the scout feedback on him that was just very tepid.
Mm-hmm.
But it's how much of that is his injury. Like, it's just there's a lot of variables with him that made it a really hard guy to evaluate for this rankings purpose. So honestly, like, it's just a straight hedge. Like, it could go up 10 or down 10 pretty quickly next season, depending on what we see in the feedback we get.
I agree. Maybe not 10. Well, I guess it could. Yeah, if he looks great. Yeah. That sounds right. But Jordan and Monegro are interesting ones. Jordan, of course, being the guy we always get the questions about.
Yeah,
it's the profile.
It's just tough. I mean, it's no fault of his, but right first basemen just are not a thing teams are looking for.
Yeah.
And to be a good right first baseman, you have to be able to impact the baseball, and that's just not something he's shown the ability to do in the high minors.
Which is wild.
And it's weird that he might be a hit over power guy now.
That's what Alex said that in his chat today, and
which is just not something I ever thought I would say. But his power just is not translated, and he still hits the ball too much on the ground. But there's just a lot of red flags. Like, he sees among the fewest pitches per plate appearance of anyone in New York. It's just a super aggressive approach still. And that's not changed. That's what it was in the low minors is what it is in the high minors. But, when you're doing what he did in high A, where you're carrying like a close to 40% hard hit rate and you're hitting the ball pretty hard, you can kind of get away with it. Against double A pitching, nope. Hard hit rate cratered, his exit velo's cratered. And that's just a bad combo when you're so limited defensively. And it's a really tough profile. And, I've really liked what I've seen from him this offseason in terms of what he's been doing to putting in the work. It seems like he's transforming his body, which
he said he dropped like 15 pounds.
15 pounds.
Did we talk about the tweet where he mentioned his mental health struggles?
I think we did at the time.
Yeah,
I believe it was a couple episodes ago.
And I went back to look at it.
I applaud him for his honesty. Like,
100%.
That takes a really strong person, and it can be really hard, especially. And I can imagine when you're in the spotlight like he is, to be that be that open and be that vulnerable, frankly.
Sure.
And so I think I've been really impressed with what I've seen from him this offseason in terms of like, being more open about things like that, and also putting in the work. Like, I've liked he's putting out a lot of videos, and some of that is, we're able to see it, but I think it's cool that he's making a concerted effort to work on his conditioning and getting, he's doing a lot. It seems like weighted bat training, bat speed stuff, which has been the knock on him,
Yep.
And so, yeah,
100%.
if he can come into camp next year with that stuff improved, that could change the narrative pretty substantially, but we're going to have to wait and see with that. But yeah.
And quick, just the one thing I wanted to mention with Jordan too, the reason I brought up the mental health thing is I went back and looked at that tweet again. He did mention, and I kind of missed it the first time, that the mental health stuff was part of why, like, the weight was fluctuating maybe a little bit.
Oh yeah, I can completely
which I
see
can
that.
100% understand.
Yeah.
Right. So it's kind of like, all right, well, if you can get on top of one thing do they go hand in glove? So we'll see. And you know, good luck to him, obviously. But Monegro is another one who we kind of figuring out what to do with him is an interesting process.
He's a pretty polarizing pitcher, because if you look at his stats, obviously they were really good. He flew through the system. He started in the FCL and he got up all the way up to Greenville. Mm-hmm. But he's just a very unique guy because it's a fastball and 2 breaking balls. And there's not a lot of pitchers like that. And it's not a sinker though, but it doesn't have it's a 4-seam fastball, but it doesn't really have good metrics either. Mm-hmm. So he's basically pitching off of his breaking balls. And that was when I saw him in Greenville. That's what it was. You know, he's throwing a ton. His breaking balls are legit. Like he's got 2 good breaking balls, but against more advanced hitters, it's hard to pitch backwards like that and be a starter. And that's kind of the concern for me. I'm worried that long-term, it's probably more of a bullpen profile. And that's why for me, I was hesitant to push him like high up inside the top 20 yet. I need to see more. I need to see, you know, is he going to develop a changeup, or are we going to evolve that slider into a cutter, you know, get a little more differentiation from his curveball, because the slider and curveball can run into each other. And what are we going to do with the fastball? Because right now it's just it's not truly in the dead zone like some other guys in the system, but it's not a very good pitch. If you look at it metric wise, it's, you know, he's a short strider. IVB is like fringy. It's below average, frankly. You know, the spin rate's pretty good, but it doesn't miss a lot of bats and it gets hit really hard. So that's just a rough combo. So I wonder, you know, maybe they try to make him a 2-seam guy. Maybe he becomes a sinker guy. Maybe they try. I'm interested to see. He's someone that the Craig Breslow Academy, which is what I've just decided I'm going to call it now.
The Craig Breslow Academy.
I'm interested. Okay. I want to see him in the Craig Breslow Academy, and you know, with the guys they're bringing in, because they're hiring a bunch of new pitching guys again, which is pretty interesting.
Yeah,
you know,
more
they're bringing in a bunch
guys.
They also but not just driveline. They're hiring some other guys. Like they brought in. They hired a bullpen coach in AAA who seems, there's definitely an Andrew Bailey connection in some way in here, because he's worked with Logan Webb before too, it seems. Mm-hmm. So I wonder how much influence Bailey is going to have over not just the MLB staff, but also some of the development. But he's someone I think could really benefit from working on his fastball and kind of trying to optimize his fastball, because what it is right now is just not really that good a pitch other than having good velocity. But until I see that, you know, that's not something I'm smart enough to, you know, say he can definitely do, if that makes sense. Sure. So for now, he's outside the top 20 barely, because I just need to see that translate on field before I'm comfortable pushing him up and out of that, you know, that reliever-ish zone.
Yeah, that makes sense. Because then it's after him, you get a couple of more infielders, and David Hamilton and Antonio Anderson. Hamilton, obviously, we've seen a lot of what he can do.
Probably could not be 2 more different players, where one of them is a 26-year-old infielder who is what he is. He can run really well, and that's about it. Mm-hmm. But, you know, with the way baseball is played, there might be a home for him on a roster as like a 26 guy.
Yeah.
And Anderson, who knows? He's an 18-year-old hit tool first, you know, a hitter who
already
he had a rough debut, but he's a third base guy, switch hitter. We'll wait and see what he can do at the plate.
Mm-hmm. And then you get into
then it's the pitcher.
Now it's the arms,
reliever, roulette, or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah. I mean, because then it's Hunter Dobbins from, you know, at 23, followed by Elmer Rodriguez Cruz, Luis Guerrero, and Angel Bastardo, Brian Mata, Alex Hoppy, before you get to a couple more infielders to round out the top 30, and Marvin Alcantara and Franklin Arias. But that Dobbins to Hoppy group are like 6 completely different pitchers.
Yeah.
They're all very different.
Yeah.
Most of them, interestingly, in the high minors, except for Rodriguez Cruz, which is, you know, again, let's get all these guys into the Craig Breslow Academy, as you put it, and then actually add a few more guys who are after Arias, in Ryan Fernandez, Brandon Walter, Christopher Troy, Dalton Rogers. And then Brooks Brannon comes in before Grant Gambrell and then a couple players later, Zach Penrod, Jettix, and Paez. All of those arms are guys that could fluctuate wildly for me. Maybe not the ceiling. I don't know how much further up most of those guys could push, Honestly, like, are any of them starters? Probably not. I mean,
see, the two weird ones to me are Dobbins and Elmer, and that's why
that's why they're 23 and 24.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Elmer, I don't think he profiles as a reliever at all.
No, he really doesn't. The stuff isn't there for
start. He has to start, except I think he got hurt last year, I want to say, right? Didn't he get hurt
end
last
of the year? I mean, he was out for some time, but even while he was pitching, the stuff just doesn't.
It doesn't.
I mean, he's not missing any bats.
No, and that's the thing. It's his velo did tick up. He's up to like 92.6 average of fastball, whereas I think when he entered the org, it was like 89-ish. It was below sub 90.
And he's got to get bigger. That's part of it. He's the king of
good,
limbs.
But yeah, he doesn't miss bats. It's a low spin fastball. It's just there's just a bunch of fringy average pitches there. Mm-hmm. So, and that's why I probably won't play in the bullpen. Whereas I think Dobbins is kind of different than that. Whereas I think Dobbins stuff could play in the bullpen.
Yep. And he's got good control too, which is nice.
Dobbins throws a ton of strikes, but his fastball is pretty hittable. And I think the health concerns and delivery are pretty real with him. So that's why he's not really someone we have inside the top 20 for now. But I liked what I saw from him in Portland. And he's someone that if he can, stay healthy on the mound, I think has a pretty good shot at being a big league pitcher at some point in his career. I do like his stuff. And I think that it's a unique look with his delivery, which is on the flip side, though, why he's been hurt a lot, I think, is that delivery. Right. So,
yeah. And then you start getting some true relievers in Guerrero. Mata's there now. Hoppy's there.
Bastardo's not probably there yet, a reliever.
He's probably a reliever.
He's another guy whose fastball is low quality fastball. Mm-hmm. Also we'll get to it in a little bit. Bastardo, not someone I wouldn't rule out a team taking a shot on in Rule 5 if you like what you've seen with him.
Sure.
But yeah, I think that that's well said that these guys there are a lot of relieverish guys in there. And this is what I kind of what we talked about before with guys who are relievers. It's just really hard to put them inside the top 20.
Yeah.
It's just, there's a certain ceiling with that. And I think it's shown in these early days of free agency too. Cause if you look at, the guys that are signing, and I think a good example was someone today who signed with the Mets. I want to say Kyle Crick, who's been a really good, he's been a solid MLB reliever in the past. He didn't even get a major league deal this year. Granted, he is coming off an injury, but
yeah, I think in part that's an injury situation, but
it's just the point is the bar for reliever is really high that these teams have just started treating them like pretty fungibly. And, that's why it's hard to push those guys inside the top 20 unless, you look like a future closer who can move really quickly, which is a pretty rare breed these days.
It is. It really is.
I think do you want to talk about 29 and 30? Because I think there are two names.
Yeah, because that was interesting because there was a point at which, when we were talking about all this underlying data, Franklin Arias, who granted was in the DSL, so I always have to take that with an enormous grain of salt. But
yeah,
Arias he moved up from 43 to 30. He's our first huge jumper in the rankings.
But I think we should warn, like when you get down here, 13 spots is not that many.
It's not. No, it's a, put it this way. For example, like we have a breakout performer of the year that we give out for the website. Right. And the debate kind of was coming down to Yordani Monegro, who went from not being ranked to being a guy that eventually wound up in the top 20. And Roman Anthony, a guy who started in like the teens, but wound up, we didn't know he was going to be number 1 at the time, but at least top 5. And I'm like, jumping 10 spots into the top 5 means a lot more than jumping 40 spots from unranked to 20 to me.
100%.
Like that's a bigger jump.
100%.
It's each one is just a much larger jump and much more important.
I think another way to think of it is jumping from like a 35 to a 40 which is what you're doing when you're jumping from like unranked to 30.
So when you're saying a 35 to a 40 projection, not number 35.
Yeah, not necessarily a 35, but like a 35-ish grade. So you're jumping from like an org guy to maybe
up and down
player. Is not as big as jumping from a bench player to, an above average regular or up and down guy to a regular. That's a much bigger jump. And I think that's a good way to kind of think about it is, if the guys in the top 60, the back end of the top 60, there are definitely some orgy guys in there. And if you're jumping from that to an up and down, it's definitely impressive. It's like an encouraging development, but it's not as encouraging as when you got a guy who jumps into that, regular or above territory.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, I mean, it's a big jump, but Arias, when you look at his underlying kind of numbers, they look really, really good for a guy that's that young. I mean, he's, as I'm trying to pull them up here,
I mean, he doesn't see a lot of pitches. He's super aggressive, but
he's aggressive.
But he makes a ton of contact.
He doesn't see a lot of pitches, but I think he was also getting strikes because his chase rate wasn't high.
No, he has a really good bat.
He swings.
He makes a ton of contact.
Yeah, he doesn't swing and miss, so that's why he's not seeing as many pitches.
Yep. He makes a ton of contact, and he's shown some ability to hit the ball reasonably hard already for someone who's not very big. Age. Like, I mean, he's also probably like 160, 170 pounds, and his numbers are really good.
Put it this way: his hard hit numbers are comparable to Blaze Jordan's in AA.
Yeah, but that's
as a 17-year-old. I mean, it's a terrible comparison. You wouldn't use that to say this player is better than this player, but I'm saying like. For a 17-year-old, that's good to see that you are hitting the ball with some authority. Yeah, not not Blaze Jordan and high A numbers, but
he's someone who spring training and early next year is going to be a pretty interesting step for him. I think he probably will start in extended, so it'll be more like what do we see in spring training, what do we hear from extended. But he's definitely someone who I could see going up or down a few spots depending on how he looks then as we get our first eyes on him, and a lot of other scouts do too.
I could see him in Salem were it not for the fact that they need to get playing time for like Zanatello, Antonio Anderson, and the guys they already have there.
I also think it's not out of the realm of possibility that Cespedes might just start in Salem next year. So we need to.
Oh, I agree. Yeah. I mean,
so there's I think Arias is a shoo-in for the FCL.
Well, that's the thing. There's only so many spots because the thing is Zanatello, they said they want to get him exposure in center field too. So that's a good opportunity to do that when you've got Cespedes there.
Yeah.
You've got that stud. So. Yeah, So Arias, like, I mean, he could mess around, and if with injuries and stuff, like it's the Cutter Coffee situation, right? Like, if things fall into place the right way, he certainly could wind up in Salem.
Yeah, and I think Alcantara is a different one because Alcantara is an interesting guy because if you look he just needs to get stronger. I think we talked about it before.
He's the lowest exit velos of most hitters in the system that are in the U.S.
Yeah, he's a really, really good defender, like really good, and. There's projection in the body. He's a really good athlete. It's just, you got to get stronger. And that's why, even with, if you look at his his OPS last year in Green in the FCL was 653, nothing to write home of. In Salem, it was worse. Obviously it was 534, but though it should tell you how encouraging and how good the reports were on the defense and the athleticism and the projection that we're still keeping them on top 30, even with that, really bad batted ball data. There are people who really like that, who are very interested in him because of that. And that's why he's someone who I still like above a lot of the other guys in this tier. Is I'm willing to gamble on that stuff. Sure. If you're telling me he can legitimately play shortstop and has projection, sure, I will take that in a heartbeat over a guy who's kind of like lower ceiling, maybe a little higher floor type.
Yeah, that makes sense. Outside the top 30, like I mentioned that next group of pitchers, the next guy we probably need to mention is Brandon Walter, who dropped 17 spots from 15 to 32. It's not there. Like the velo jump the stuff didn't come back after the bulging disc injury. Like, what is he sitting now? Like low 90s, if that.
He was 90.9 in AAA this year, 91.3 in the majors. So.
Yeah, clearly it's a reliever. I think the ship has sailed at this point on him being a starter. Which cool. He's a major leaguer potentially.
But it's also hard when you're a reliever who doesn't miss bats. That's just a tough profile.
Yeah.
It's just there's not a lot of ceiling. He kind of is what he is, and it's a crafty lefty who is going to have to consistently get left-handers out, and just because he just doesn't have it's not put away stuff. So
he'll be up and down this year. We'll see where it goes. Troy, a true reliever guy like with that prior group, like Ryan Fernandez there, Dalton Rogers, lefty in high A, who
probably
good as a starter, probably a reliever. Yeah. Again, these are all similar guys. Brooks Brandon at 35. I mean, there's just still no sample size. I mean, he's barely played after a year and a half because of injury. So,
yeah. Well, and it's also, he's got one of those, he's super he's got that stocky, strong, really muscular build that I do wonder how that will work with catching. It seems like a body that's prone to injuries, and that's what we've seen in the first two seasons. No, it's it's legit raw power, but I'm just not sure what else there is there. Because we just haven't seen it. I mean, I think he got 75 plate appearances or so this year. Just not a lot of a sample size.
I don't even know if he got that. I think he only got 25.
You got 52 in
he got 52 in the complex,
25 in A ball.
Got it.
I'll say he hits the ball really hard when he makes contact, though.
Oh, yeah. I saw him just absolutely yoke a first pitch dong on in Fredericksburg. It was like he knew where the pitch was going to be. I mean, he guessed right. Yeah. Like he knew exactly where, like he guessed where the pitch was going to be, was correct, and destroyed the baseball. Yeah. But again, like I don't think I saw much else out of him.
No. I just want to. Can I mention on Troy quickly?
Sure.
Don't look at his AFL stat line to get a picture. He had one terrible start or terrible outing.
He didn't even record now, right?
Like, I don't remember what it was.
Might have been one.
It really skewed everything, and I thought he finished really strong, really well there. And just it's nice to see they kind of do have a stable of up, and we'll see how many of them survive Rule 5 because he's not eligible. A few of the other guys are, but they could have some really nice depth options there, ready to go off the 40-man, but capable of stepping in if need be in the high minors next year. So I think that's an encouraging development for the pitching depth. Obviously, the starting pitching depth isn't there yet in the system, but they're stockpiling some really interesting relief prospects. Especially in the high minors right now.
Yeah, at this point, I don't know that we need to list everyone. You can go to soxprospects.com and see the full list. Zach Penrod, a guy we probably need to mention, up from 49 to 38. Just a continuation of this wild story of this guy.
Yeah.
We'll see where it goes. We're going to talk about him in a sec, maybe with the Rule 5 segment, but Zach Penrod, Indy signing into the top 40 that offseason. That's some good scouting. I like it. I don't know if you got anything to add on him. Again, that's the other, 10 spot jump in that group. The rest of the guys, again, I don't want to go through everyone. So maybe just from 41 to 50, we should mention Chris Olivares, a minor league free agent signing, debuting at number 49 in the rankings. A guy who I think we certainly, I think we talked about on the last episode, but
it's interesting.
It's not your normal sort of minor league free agent type. It's a guy who's been hurt, a guy
he's 23? I think he's 23.
I know he's young. I don't know the number off the top.
I think he's 23. Like he's younger though than some of the other pitchers we've talked about already. I mean, Penrod, for example. So, and
you could see if this were like the system he had always been in, I could see him just from inertia being higher. You know what I mean?
Yeah. It's the Brian Mata situation.
Exactly. He's Mata. Same thing. He's kind of not. Mata's not a bad comp, honestly. That's an interesting point. So seeing what he's able to do this year is going to be really interesting.
Yeah.
Chris Olivares. Anyone else in that group you want to mention? I mean, we got it's more like, I don't even want to put guys in boxes because it's every person I step down to, it's a completely different kind of player in this area.
I mean, I think like Felix Cepeda and Rydis Sena Rose, they're both just pure relief prospects, but they have some interesting traits. So they get a little bit of a bump.
They're at 46 and 47 respectively. Yeah.
I thought Tyler McDonough had a nice fall league, which kind of carrying over. I thought he was pretty good at the end of the season when I saw him.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a high ceiling, but I still think there's a chance he can get up to the big leagues because he just does a bunch of things and he can play a bunch of positions, and that type of versatility and athleticism plays.
Yep.
Those are really the two that really stood out in that range to me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And then, the last time we had a bunch of guys debut or jump back into the rankings, but true debuts, Elvis Soto is in the building at number 55, a pitcher who was in the FCL for most of the year and got a cup of coffee in Salem. Luis Cohen, another FCL pitcher, debuts at 58. Hayden Mullins at 59, a guy who has he pitched yet? He hasn't pitched yet, right?
Yeah, he has. He threw 3.2 innings this year.
Oh, okay. Sorry. I don't know how I could have missed those 3.2 innings. And I guess Connolly Early technically debuted at 56, the draftee out of UVA in the fifth round.
Yeah. He got like 500K though. He got like their fourth or fifth highest bonus. So
yeah. So, just an interesting guy at 56, just some interesting arms to take a flyer on that we wanted to have in the 60. I think.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it, because it's with Soto, Early, Cohen, Mullins, guys we didn't get to see last year because either they weren't in the org or they were, FCL / coming off injury.
Mm-hmm.
But just, some good feedback from scouts who did happen to see them. Soto throws pretty hard. He's up to 96 already as a 19-year-old. He's a reliever, but it's decent stuff. There's a potential plus fastball, maybe more, with an okay slider. And a decent changeup. Like, that's, pretty interesting. And then Mullins, I think I talked about him last week, but he's someone who, he's got a good fastball. He had pedigree coming out of the draft. He's just been hurt. And as a lefty, given what we talked about earlier with the kind of lack of left-handed pitching in the system, if he shows the kind of stuff he did at the end of last season, he could be pretty interesting and move up, into that relieverish rankings in like the 30 to 40 range pretty quickly. Cause I think the stuff it was pretty good in college. And if that can come back, you're looking at a lefty who can throw, 93, 94 with a good breaking ball. That's pretty interesting right there.
And of course, Noah Song at 60, because why not?
Wait and see. We shall see what he looks like next season. I mean, it's
at 60 because we ranked to 60.
I would not rule anything out with him. If you told me he came back and the work ethic is there, the makeup is there. It's just how much, frankly, it's how much can you push a body that hasn't been playing baseball for the last 3 to 4 years? How much can you get out of it compared to what he was before? That's the big question. And we have no corollary, so I don't know the answer to that. And anyone who says they do is lying.
Nope.
So we shall wait and see with him.
Yep. Well, that's the rankings. And if you've got any questions about the rankings, hit us up, podcast@soxprospects.com. We'll answer them on a future episode. Doesn't need to be a rankings episode for us to discuss the rankings. And those are going to be there that way for a while. Well, coming out of the rankings, Ian, as we mentioned, those are probably going to stay the same going forward for a while now for the offseason, which is why we put so much effort into, going back through them with the fine-tooth comb. But one thing that could change them is the Rule 5 draft, which is part of the winter meetings that are coming up this week. Where are they? Are they in Nashville? Yeah, Nashville. Okay, yeah. Which is apparently an absolute abomination of a complex. I've seen a number of people complaining about having to go there. But at any rate, two things I guess we want to hit on in this segment. It's the Rule 5 draft, but it's also what's going to happen with the major leagues. And Ian, I think let's start with the majors, and then we'll close with the Rule 5 draft and then emails. But Red Sox haven't done anything yet, as you mentioned. A couple guys are off the board. Aaron Nola resigned. Big names are off the board. Aaron Nola resigned with the Phillies. What other big ones have gone down? It's mostly been kind of B and C level. Oh, Sonny Gray.
That was that one.
Yeah, that was the. Who did he wind up going to? I can't even remember.
Cardinals.
Minnesota? Or Cardinals, right.
Cardinals have him. They got Lance Lynn.
Oh,
after that, it's all the one-year deal guys.
Yeah, well, it's the average age of 35 in that rotation.
Him, Lance Lynn, and Kyle Gibson.
Can you imagine if the Red Sox had a rotation with an average age of 35, how people would react?
Yeah. Wouldn't be great.
Good. No. Anyway.
But yeah, so it's mostly, other than Nola and Sonny Gray, it's all been 1-year deals, which it's an interesting one because
it's small money.
It's the question is, is the right play to lock in those 1-year guys early and then go for the big fish, or is it better to go for the big fish first and then you could be caught left out? And it's kind of putting the Red Sox in an interesting position because I don't think a lot of the safety net guys are going to be there by the time. It seems like that they're going to be looking to address that. Like Nick Martinez, who signed with the Reds, was someone who was kind of interesting to me as kind of a flyer to be that second starter you sign. But right now, it seems like a lot of the eggs are in the basket of Yamamoto and Jordan Montgomery because various reports have them not really in. They're kind of out on Ohtani, which isn't really a surprise. He just doesn't really fit. It's not great.
It's a weird thing to say about the best baseball player in the world, that he's a bad fit for your organization, but he's a bad fit for the roster. He just doesn't.
I would obviously I'd take him in a heartbeat, but
sure, I would love as a fan to see him as a Red Sox.
I get why you're not aggressively pursuing him. And it seems like Blake Snell, they checked in on, and he wants to stay on the West Coast. So that isn't a great fit. I believe that it's been said that they're not really in on Eduardo Rodriguez. So, the names that's pretty much the entirety of the top tier right there. So It seems like it's Montgomery who, as Chris Cotillo had a fun story about how he's actually living in Boston right now, which is kind of funny.
His wife is a resident at a Boston hospital.
Not surprising at all if you know Boston, because that's
of course, of course.
So many
all of the
hospitals in
Boston.
Yeah. But it's just funny that he's working out of BC this offseason. And then Yamamoto, who I think Jeff Passan today had an interesting article talking about how that it seems like the bidding for him could get over like 250 million, which is so much money. But at the same time, we were discussing before the show, how often do you have the opportunity to add someone who teams consider a potential, number 2, number 1 starter type who's 25 without giving up anything but money? Very rarely, So it doesn't cost you a draft pick, doesn't cost you any players. You just got to sign him. So it's going to be really interesting to see what happens with those guys. I think those are probably the top 2 names I'm most interested to see where they end up. And because if the Red Sox miss out on them, I don't know where they turn for starting pitching. It's going to be really interesting to see what the pivot move is. But yeah, I think starting pitching market is the big one, and that's kind of what we're all waiting for. And I do wonder if that's kind of what's holding up everything else with them. How much of the budget are you having to devote to starting pitching? How many are you signing? And then from there, I think you kind of have to figure that out before you move on to things like second base and center field.
Yeah, well, because the thing too is if you look at it, like apparently they're really interested on the trade market. And so what is that? Like, is that Dylan Cease? Is that Corbin Burns?
But Dylan Cease, they want Brian Bayo for him. They have since the deadline, what's the point? Like,
I'm not super in on Cease. Where are you on Cease?
I'm not either.
It's one really good season and a bunch of like 2 above average seasons. And last year he was not great. He was like a little below average.
Yeah. But you get 2 years of control, then you have to pay him. As a general rule, I don't love trading for starting pitchers, like high end starting pitchers, because having to give out prospect capital and then a big contract to me, I just would much rather minimize my risk and just sign guys, because at least if that's the case, all you lose out on is money. The worst case scenario is you trade for Dylan Cease, he gets hurt, and you're out the prospects and the contract. That's just, the Red Sox are not in a position, I don't think, where they can handle something like that happening. Whereas, if you go out and you sign, pitcher X and he happens to get hurt, okay, the money is obviously a sunk cost, but at least you didn't have to trade, Roman Anthony or Marcelo Meyer type to get that player. So I'm not that in on Dylan Cease. If I would be more interested in, as I said, like going out and signing one of the big ticket free agents and then looking to see if I can find a trade for kind of like one of those mid-tier, like a guy who's more like a number 4 starter who I think I could coach up, like someone that, maybe your analytics team is identified, or someone when you have a scout who really has, conviction on. I'd rather see the Red Sox kind of find a lesser name like that and then think they can get more out of them by bringing them into the pitching development system, especially we didn't really talk about it. They brought in Andrew Bailey as the pitching coach, which I think is
I guess that's happened since the last episode, which we knew he was coming, probably most likely.
But I think the fact that they got him over some bench coach offers is pretty impressive. And he has done some great stuff with the Giants pitching staff. I mean, I look at some of the guys like Logan Webb is obviously, example A. And if I were Andrew Bailey, I would show Brian Bayo a million videos of Logan Webb throwing a sinker and be like, we need this, not 4-seam fastballs at the belt. But it's not just, it's beyond him though. Like Bailey and the Giants get the most out of a lot of their guys. I mean, there's guys who aren't even who you've never heard of, who have insane stuff with them. And so I would love to, if you can find a guy that Bailey is really interested in, or as I said, like someone your analytics teams really likes and you can bring in and kind of, mold into the pitcher that you think he could be, that would be my ideal target for a second starter if you're going the trade route.
Yeah, I mean, there's that, because especially if you look at the free agent market, like at the top, it's pretty good, right? Like you mentioned, it's Yamamoto, it's you wait a year, but Ohtani, Blake Snell, Jordan Montgomery, Kershaw's not coming to Boston, so you could ignore him. Eduardo Rodriguez, I feel like that ship has sailed. Then you get like Mike Clevenger is interesting. And then it drops to like Wade Miley, like Michael Wacha. Maybe you bring him back. I don't know. But after a career best year at his age.
Well, that's what I was saying. The market for those guys is pretty set. It's like $13 million a year, $13 million a year.
Michael Lorenzen is the next best pitcher. Like Seth Lugo.
Don't love that. Like, I think that's why
Stroman.
at that point, I'd rather just bring back Paxton. Like,
but then you're looking at guys like Shota Imanga from Japan.
Well, that's the wild card. Is there's a bunch of international guys beyond Yamamoto that I'll be honest, I don't know enough about. Like Imaga's one. There's the Cuban guy who the Red Sox were reportedly at a workout of in the Dominican.
Oh, Rodriguez, who was not defected from Japan, but basically like didn't play the last year in Japan.
Yeah,
because
he was in the WBC last year. His stuff was nasty. In like the first game for Cuba, and then I think he went back to Japan and just didn't play because he was getting ready, obviously, to come to the U.S.
No, he didn't go back to Japan. He didn't report.
Oh, maybe okay.
He legit like left the team and was like, "Nah, I'm going MLB, guys. Sorry."
Well, so that's the interesting one that they were at the workout there, and maybe that's the second guy. That's the guy who you think that you can coach up into turn into a number 3, number 4 starter. But I just think it's a very interesting class, and I get why like teams like the Cardinals are being aggressive. Is you don't want to be left on the sidelines. If your pitching staff is a real red flag or had real issues last year, you need to strike early, because if you miss out on those top guys or the top guys on your list, you need to be able to pivot, and the names that you can pivot to are dwindling quickly.
Sure. Yeah. Because I mean, it's like I don't want like Jack Flaherty. Like, I don't know, maybe you see something that you can make him back into the guy that looked like he was going to be a top of the rotation guy with the Cardinals before he really just fell off a cliff last year and he's been hurt. Otherwise, I mean, like I said, like you've been saying, the options just dwindle right quick. Alex Wood, who split time between the rotation and
he's never been healthy enough to throw, 200 innings.
No,
and that's the thing. When you look at the Red Sox rotation, I think they have enough of those variance guys already. Like
that they've got plenty of that.
You have Chris Sale, you have Pavetta's a different camp for me because he can at least give you innings. But what I'm thinking is you have Chris Sale, you have Cutter Crawford, you have Garrett Whitlock, you have Tanner Houck. Between those 4, I think you hope you can get 2 starters, maybe. Though there's variance there. You're not sure if you could get 30 innings out of each of those guys or you could get 150. You just don't know.
Yeah.
And that's what like Alex Wood types to me are. Whereas, at least with Nick Pivetta, he is what he is, but he can give you 160, 180, 200 innings in a year. And I just think that
the Red Sox, but
the Red Sox don't need more types like that. They need guys who make it so Brian Bayo is your number 3 starter and those other guys are your 4 and 5.
Yeah.
And they're just not that. They're the number of people who fit that criteria is pretty small right now. And that's the hard part.
Yeah, it's tough. And then the other thing, like we've mentioned, is right-handed hitter. Ideally a second baseman, because that's where you've got a hole right now, but could in theory go elsewhere. I don't know the obvious move to address that. I don't know.
I mean, the guy to me is Brandon Drury with the Angels.
You think?
I think he is a perfect fit. He hits lefties well. He can play a bunch of different positions in addition to second base, and he has power. And I think that's the biggest thing. Because we kind of talked about when I went on my Whit Merrifield rant last time. I don't think they need another light hitting, guy who's below average defender. If you're going to get someone to play second base, they either need to have some pop, be a good defender, or both. And I think Drury fits that pretty well. Like his arm is bad, but last year he was in the 89th percentile on outs above average. His hard hit rate was in 77th percentile. Barrel rate was in the 70th percentile. So he added value at the plate. He added value in the field. Not a good base runner, but whatever. I don't really care. And he hit 26 home runs last year, 28 the year before that, close to 500 slug, OPS over 800. I think that's just a perfect fit. But the question is, are the Angels looking to trade him? And we don't know what the Angels are doing. That's the hard part.
It's 1 year, $8.5 million for those wondering about the contract.
That's the type of player I would be going after more so than, trying to give out like a 3-year, $40 million contract to someone like Whit Merrifield. But the hard part is that he's, as you said, he's under contract. He's not a free agent. And if you look at the free agent market, there's not really anyone who fits that profile. You have guys like Jonathan India. Oh, no, Jonathan India's on a team. Not Jonathan India. You have the Whit Merrifield types who aren't really good at either of those things. They're just they do things okay. And beyond that, the middle infield free agent pool is just not good at all. So
no, it's really not. I mean, I'm looking at like the Athletics ranking of the remaining free agents, right? And the first middle infielder you get to is, and I'm not counting Justin Turner.
Yeah. If Justin Turner could play second base every day, I'd sign him back in a heartbeat.
No question. if you want to count Adam Frazier at 32.
Yeah. That's why I think second base is the trade market move, which is why which is why you sign starting pitchers, because I don't think you don't want to
Merrifield at 57 is the next one. Sorry.
You don't want to have to use the prospect capital to trade for both positions. Like I'd much rather go out. Yeah, I'd much rather go out and sign the pitchers and, trade for a Drury type, trade for someone like that.
Yeah. I don't know is India fit? Probably not.
He can't play defense.
Yeah.
And I just think that
we've done that before with defense in the middle
when
infield.
You have pitching oriented guys too now in charge, I just think that they're going to be more cognizant of stuff like that. Because India last year 8th percentile in range, outs above average.
Yeah,
like that's awful.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't.
What was he the year before? Because I feel like he might have been a little dinged up last year.
Fielding. He's been terrible since
he's always been terrible. Okay.
Yeah. He was worse last year.
Yep. I didn't think to the contrary.
He's minus 17 run or no. He's minus 23. He was minus 10 outs above average last year. He's minus 23 for his career.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So he's not a good defender at all.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's telling to me with someone like India that the Reds are open to trading him. When you have a young team, you have a guy who statistically on paper looks like he performs. But if they're willing to move him out because they think they have better internal options, that should be telling.
Yeah. And look, like the options they do have, it's dwindling because Luis Urias is gone. I think Pablo Reyes actually, I should have this up because I think he actually got hurt down in the Dominican.
Oh, did he?
Yeah. He started gangbusters. He had like 4 home runs in 9 games or something crazy. And then, Brendan Campbell had our fall winter roundup this past week. And he pointed out that Reyes left last Wednesday's game against Las Aguilas in the 7th inning due to apparent discomfort per the team's Twitter account, which
the dreaded discomfort.
But so I don't know what the deal is with Reyes, but he had been playing really well. But, I'm not going into the year with Pablo Reyes as my starting second baseman. I'm sorry. Like, I don't care how good he was this past year. Like, it's just not it if you're trying to compete. So, you've got Reyes, you've got Valdez, who, he looked a little better maybe at the end of the year defensively, but he's got so much to work on. Not a good defender. David Hamilton,
not an everyday player.
He hasn't shown he can hit the ball off the infield yet.
No.
So they need to do something. I think I'm with you. It's the trade market. Do you think the Red Sox, let's put it this way, a week from now, winter meetings are over, what do you think we're looking back to the Red Sox did during the winter meetings? Do you think anything gets done? I'm pessimistic.
I think they do something.
Groundwork gets laid.
I think they do something. I think it's whether it's, trade Alex Verdugo, re-sign Adam Duvall. I think something's going to happen like that.
Sure. Okay.
But I mean, as we said, like the big, it seems like the market is just waiting. It's weird because the baseball free agency plays out so differently than the NFL and the NBA, where everything gets done immediately. Baseball is just this slow drip over the course of the offseason. And I think it's going to take, we need a couple of these big names to come off the board before things would be before things get rolling.
Mm-hmm. I guess really quick before we get to Rule 5, Ian, we should mention a couple of transactions since the last episode. The Red Sox re-signed Wyatt Mills, who they had non-tendered, to a 2-year minor league contract. He's rehabbing an arm injury, obviously. So turned out that non-tender, it makes a lot more sense in hindsight of cut him loose to sign him to a 2-year deal. And they also signed a minor league free agent, Jorge Benitez, who had come out of of course, his page won't load now. He came out of the Seattle organization. High minors depth. That's about it.
Yeah, he's like 89 to 92. Fringy stuff. He's an org guy.
Yep. So that has happened since the last episode, and that's about it there. Rule 5, Ian. Coming up next Thursday. We've previewed the guys when we talked about the, protection decision. So I guess what it comes down to at this point is this. What do you think happens? Where do you think when we're kind of recapping, I guess next Thursday, because we can probably we'll do an episode. I'm sure something is going to happen, and I'm sure.
Yeah, I mean, I'm hopeful that we'll have to do like an emergency pitch clock episode at some point next week.
The pitch clock, yes, we'll get put on the pitch clock. That's a good use.
I'm
the
hopeful.
Pitch clock.
I could see
You're
it being
hopeful. Okay.
I would say like at the least, I think we will likely have one after the Rule 5 draft because I have a suspicion they're going to get at least one player taken.
I would be more surprised if they do not lose someone in Rule 5.
Correct. I would agree. And I don't know who it is because I honestly think they're like there's like 6 guys that it just depends on the team. Like it's kind of what we talked about last season. Like you could think player A is better than player B, but if player B is a better fit for a team's roster that has an open spot, then player B is going to get picked. And that's what makes Rule 5 fun, but also hard to predict is, you can't just say like, well, we have Shane Drohan highest in the rankings, so he's going to get picked. If a team doesn't need the lefty long reliever, then he's not going to get picked. Because you have to think about it. That's the way teams are looking in the Rule 5 draft. It's how we have this spot open on our MLB roster. Can this guy help us in that role? And that's why it's interesting because I could see Drohan getting picked. I could see him not getting picked.
I could see Drohan going 1-1.
Or I could see him not getting selected though.
Yes.
Because it's all going to come down to, does a team have a spot for a long lefty reliever?
Yep.
I don't know. I don't know the other 29's, 26 man's roster inside and out. Same thing. Then you go down and move down to the next guy. I think it's is Bastardo the next highest Rule 5 eligible?
Well, let's do this. Let's go through. I've got the list up. Let's go through. Let's do odds of getting picked, and then like I think we could say this for everyone. It's possible they don't get picked. There's no one there's no Thad Ward this year who I'm like.
Well, also last year we knew Thad Ward was getting picked 1-1 like a week before the draft.
That's true.
That was one of those.
That's true. But even before that, it was kind of like this guy's probably getting picked unless I'm missing something.
Oh yeah, no, definitely. But that one literally we knew that. He was
like so,
1-1.
I think what we would have said last year is like Ward. Like I probably would have said like 80% certain he's getting picked. Politi, like 30 to 50 somewhere in there. I would say
like 40%.
And we wouldn't have mentioned Song because he was off the board.
Well, we didn't even know. Yeah.
We didn't even realize like someone would do that. Going through the names this year, like Bastardo, I probably go 10% chance he gets picked.
Oh, I was going to go higher. I would have said like 30.
Okay.
He's just under the Politi camp.
I get it. Okay. I guess that's true. That's true.
The difference is that Politi at least was in AAA. Bastardo doesn't have the AAA experience, which is why it's lower. But in the flip side is I think Bastardo in a weird way has like more upside if a team is willing to take that risk
as a reliever. Sure.
Well, no, it's just I think it's more that he could be a multi-inning guy, whereas Politi's just like a generic.
Oh, versus Politi. I thought I was thinking.
Oh no, versus just Politi.
Oh, versus Politi, no question. Yeah, that's a good point. Okay, that's a good comparison.
But yeah, so are you going alphabetically? Sorry,
I'm going alphabetical because that's how our list is here, and I don't want to miss anyone. Of the names that are worth mentioning, Alan Castro, I think like 3% chance.
He's not going to get taken.
He's not going to get taken. He's too far away.
There's a reason that if the Red Sox thought there was any inkling he would be taken, they would have protected him, in my opinion.
Brendan Cholucci.
25%.
I don't think high. I'd go like 10ish.
He's a lefty, but
he's a lefty who has
also
a high spin breaking ball that teams like and has thrown in.
But he also doesn't throw strikes
previously.
But he doesn't. He's like 88 to 91 now.
Right.
And he doesn't throw strikes. But at the same time, he's a lefty. Maybe yeah, you're right. And I'll be honest, like he's a good example of someone that I think if he gets taken, you just be like, okay, like
cool.
Yeah.
And he probably
it's like Politi. It's like Politi. If he comes back, great. If not, it's not someone you're going to lose any sleep over.
Felix Cepeda. You're the Cepeda guy.
I would say about the same as Salucci, like 10. I'm going to bump my Salucci down. You're right. I don't want to.
Salucci at 10.
Yeah.
So Salucci at 10, Cepeda at 10. I think I'm there with him.
With Cepeda, it's interesting. His stuff is way better than Salucci. And Gonzalez was pretty close to being taken last year, but Gonzalez is like the premium version of Cepeda, if that makes sense.
I don't see the comp.
No. What I mean is like, in terms of you have a high A live arm with if someone considered him, I think maybe you consider him, but the difference there is that Gonzalez is was a top 15 prospect in the system at the time, whereas Cepeda is more like a guy who's in the 40 range. So yeah, I think it's pretty low.
Yep. We mentioned Drohan. I don't think there's anyone in between.
Drohan, I would say what 60-40. I would say 60%.
I might goose that. I might goose it up to like 70, but
70.
It's something like that. 60 to 70% chance he gets taken, I think. Juan Daniel Encarnacion, do you think there's any chance he gets picked?
No,
I don't either. Ryan Fernandez is interesting. Injury history is probably what keeps me from putting him at like an 100%.
50-50 because of the injury history.
Yeah.
If he had clean medicals, he would probably be on the 40 already, or he would have been taken last year and be with a different org. Mm-hmm. But his medicals are just such a red flag that it's hard to say.
Mm-hmm. A guy I'm going to mention, and you're going to know why, Ryan Fitzgerald, 0% chance in the Major League Rule 5. I'd put it at like 75% he gets taken in the minor league.
I think there's a pretty good chance he gets taken in minor league Rule 5, yeah.
Grant Gambrell, interesting one.
Like 30.
I was going to say 4. I was thinking 40.
Yeah,
something like that.
Unlikely, but I mean, if a team needs a strike throwing righty, but I think again, it's just a hard. If you're going to take a right-handed pitcher, you probably want them throwing hard and to be like a relief type. Whereas you're not really. I don't think you're looking for like, unless it's a unique situation like Thad Ward where the Nationals didn't really care about winning and they were just targeting the best player available. They thought. Gambrell he's like 26 already. It's just I don't see it. But I could see a team doing it, but I just think it's unlikely.
Justin Hagenman.
I mean, he falls in the Politi camp for me. Oh no, I was going to say like
you put him at like the 20, 30.
Yeah, maybe he's a righty reliever. All it takes is one team.
I guess that's true. Gilberto Jimenez, I think, is a 0.
Yeah.
I could see 5 if you see that. No.
You're talking about, and for the record, you're talking about minor league league Rule 5, not major league.
He's available for minor league too. Actually, I forgot about that.
There's a 0% chance.
0% chance for the major leagues. Yeah, I knew we were talking about him, but then that's right. We were talking about him for minor league Rule 5. I could see Jimenez in minor league Rule 5, maybe like a 10% chance, just because it's free.
I think we just stick to major league. I know.
I'm just saying because him and Fitzgerald were the ones I wanted to mention. Because Fitzgerald, I think, he's a AAA depth bat. Like, why not? Let's see. Christian Koss, 0. CJ Liu.
Probably 10%.
I'd throw it at 5. Wyatt Mills is interesting as like a
no,
rehabber. Chris Olivares is kind of interesting.
No one's gonna. I don't think you have to worry about Mills or Olivares because with Mills, no one is gonna sign him. He just got non-tendered. And anyway, like you're not going to. Well,
we don't know how out there he was, though.
But you're not gonna add him to pay him to rehab. I don't see that. Okay. And then with Olivares, same thing.
The upside's not there with Mills.
With Olivares, if any team was going to give him a 40-man spot, he probably would have signed with them. So they all had their chance.
That's true. Edinson Paulino is a no. No, it's a 0. AJ Politi already got picked once.
Maybe.
I think it's maybe a 10% chance with him. Let's see. Steven Scott's interesting. I don't think he gets picked. I just don't see the fit on a major league roster for a catcher like that.
Yeah, it's tough because he's not really a catcher, but
quote unquote catcher.
I mean, if a team thinks that they can hide a third they can carry they're playing. It would have to be a bad team, and they'd have to think that they can carry 3 catchers, quote unquote, and just use him as like a pinch hitter or DH type. Maybe, but I would say of the position players, how about this? I think he's the most likely to be selected, and I would still put it under 50%.
I would put it under 20.
No, I mean, I'm not saying I would go down to probably 25%, but I was just saying it's not going to happen most likely.
Yeah. Rita Senna.
Same as Cepeda. No, it's not going to happen.
Yep. Skip him, save him for last. Although the only names the names remaining, I'll just throw them all out there in one group is Brian Van Bell, Jeremy Yelland, Ryan Zefferjohn, no, yeah, and then Noah Song,
no.
I want it to happen just for the pure chaos of it.
Wouldn't he not have to get offered back if he gets taken?
He would not.
The second time?
Paliti as well. If Paliti or Noah Song gets selected,
that would be the ultimate Dave Dombrowski revenge move to just draft Song a second time.
But it wouldn't be though.
And really just immediately like DFA him and just he becomes a free agent.
Yeah.
I think the names. I mean, we mentioned a lot of names here, but I think it's going to come down to I think like 3 or 4 guys. It's Drohan, Fernandez, Bastardo. those are and maybe Scott. Those are probably the
Gambrell.
Right, but I'm saying like those three pitchers are the ones I would be watching the closest.
I would say Gambrell is very close to that group. Maybe he's not in it, but I think he's close enough to merit mention. But fair, those are the top guys. So cool. Rule 5 draft Thursday. We'll probably record afterwards. So
yeah, I mean,
do you think the Red Sox pick someone?
I was just about to say that. So they have the 40-man room. They have what, 2 open spots right now, I think, or 3? They have 3 open spots. 3.
Okay.
I feel like they're going to pick a pitcher. It's going to be like Breslow being like, this is a guy I liked when I was with Chicago, and we're just going to take him. And I wouldn't be surprised at all, too, if they went in the minor league Rule 5 and like grabbed a bunch of guys from the Cubs. Yeah. Because they had several spots on their, AAA reserve list opening, whatever. So
yeah,
they've
taken multiple guys in the minor league Rule 5 draft like every year recently.
Exactly. And so with a new leadership, kind of new guy in charge, I wonder if they go out and get a couple of his guys.
Yeah, I bet they take at least 2 guys in minor league Rule 5 for sure.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay. Emails. Shall we check the email? Again, you can hit us up at podcast@soxprospects.com because we want to talk about what you all want to hear about. So our first email this episode is from Brendan, who asks, he says that he recently discovered the podcast and wanted to let us know that he really enjoys it. Thank you for putting the time and thought into making it high quality and keep up the great work. Thank you, Brendan. He wants to know what we think should be done with Marcelo Meyer this offseason. Some people think he should be cashed in after a disappointing performance in Portland. Others think it was a product of bad health or bad ball luck. Maybe if this team has some concerns about his ceiling, he could headline a package for someone with control like Luis Robert or Fernando Tatis Jr. The Red Sox have had success in the past moving highly regarded prospects like Yohan Moncada, Michael Kopech, Manuel Margot, etc. that turn out to be fine big leaguers, but no one you regret moving. Just curious on your perspective. Thanks again. It's an interesting thought, Ian. I at first blush, I'm kind of like, dude, no. But look, I don't think you ever go into an offseason wanting to move a guy like Marcelo Meyer. I think it's the opportunity has to be right to acquire an extremely team-friendly contract in one of the best pitchers in baseball, Chris Sale, or Margot is not the same level as Moncada or Kopech. Like Margot was not. If he was a top one, he was like a fringe top 100 guy. I don't think he was even a top 100 guy when he got moved. I just don't see where that trade is this offseason. Maybe it's like Soto, Soto's 1 year guy.
I don't think they're at the point in their contention timeline that it's worth cashing in those chips yet. I think that they're about a year away from pushing in for a guy for a big trade like that.
Mm-hmm.
It's also why another reason I didn't really mention at the time why I'd be hesitant for Cease is I think the Red Sox, should be eyeing pushing for the playoffs this year, but I still think there's a pretty big gap between what they are and what the top teams in the Major League Baseball are. Teams like the Braves, the Dodgers, etc. The Astros even. So I would not be cashing in a Marcelo Meyer type chip, especially if it's selling low on him after his season.
Agreed. Our next email is from Mark, who says, maybe this is because I'm dumb, but I think that by putting Luis Perales on the 40-man, that means that we have to have him for 3 more years, or that we have him for 3 more years. He's only just made it to high A, and since he only pitched 36 innings with a nearly 5 ERA, that it's likely that he should start the year in high A next year. With that in mind, my assumption is he, as a best case scenario, he ends next year in Double A and hopefully gets up to 130 innings. And his next year, he's got to get to Triple A, and in 1 year, the pros to show it. I'm not saying at all that we shouldn't have protected him, but I'm just saying that there's a pretty thin scenario where he pitches for the Red Sox unless he shows enough that they offer him a contract. So what's the best case scenario for him, and what's the likely outcome? I think that's a little unnecessarily pessimistic.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, the reason they added him is because he's got
he would get picked.
Really good stuff. Yeah, his stuff is
he's
really
gone
good.
if they didn't protect him, he gets picked.
His fastball is good enough that and model-oriented team would look at his fastball and be like, yeah, we'll figure it out.
Yep, exactly.
And I think, as you said, if you're in 3 years, if you think he's the player that warranted being protected, he should be in the big leagues.
Yeah. And if he's not, then you're not going to worry about him not having gotten to the big leagues.
I wonder if this is like kind of Brian Mata fatigue in the sense that Mata was added, I think, at a similar point in his development. And obviously now 3 years later, was he? Because he was added after. No,
he was already in at least Double A.
Was he?
That he got Tommy after. He got Tommy.
No, but that's what I was going to say though, is that he got Tommy John in that. No, because he was added. No, he wasn't. Oh, he was coming out of Portland.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
that's
double A.
that's
Right.
double
Yeah.
A.
Sorry.
That's fine. Yeah, no, Motto was further along, and the reason that he is now out of options is because
but that's what I was going to say is like just the injury threw off the timetable with him.
So it's a little different. I mean, that's why you don't see guys like Castro or Paulino even considered, because they're so far away. You don't want to do that. I mean, look, there's a chance that Perales is a reliever, right?
Yeah.
You're going to know that by the middle of 2025 or the end of 2025. And if you know that he's a reliever, you're going to throw him in the bullpen. If he's a starter, he should not take 3 years to get to the main.
Well, and that's I think the point with pitchers is that if, you know, within 3 years he's still stalled to the point that you just remove him from the 40 man, you know, you just reclaim that spot. Like, it doesn't cost you anything.
Yeah.
Whereas, so but I mean, if everything breaks right with his development, you know, you're looking at this year, he probably starts in Greenville, ends the year in Portland. Next year he starts in Portland.
And from there, who knows?
And then it's, if he's starting in Portland, you can't rule out him making the majors in 2025. I mean, I think it's more likely 2026, but like, I still think that's well within the margin.
The timeline's fine. Look, the timeline made it so that he wasn't a slam dunk to protect. Would you say that's fair, Ian? I mean, it's the reason it wasn't a 100, stone cold lead pipe lock. He's getting protected.
I thought I was pretty confident he was going to get protected.
I was too, but I'm saying like, it was like 95% certain it's happening, not 100. Because like, you know how we talked about we should have done the like, if he doesn't get protected, here's why. There was if he doesn't get protected, here's why for Perales. Right. Well, he was a little better than Wickelman Gonzalez.
That's what I was about to say. The case was Gonzalez last year, but the difference is that his fastball is that good, like metrics wise.
Agreed. Next email's from Andrew. He says, with the rumors that the Red Sox will likely be active in the trade market for additional players, are there any prospects that you think, or young MLB players that you think the Red Sox should trade immediately before their value drops, or that their fits don't necessarily work out long-term on the Sox? And then are there any untouchables even in a hypothetical Soto trade? Let's say the hypothetical trade targets the Red Sox or George Kirby, or Kirby, Gilbert, Cease, and Burns. I guess let's start with untouchables. I don't like the concept of an untouchable because, like, for the right trade, you will move anyone.
Right. If you told me I could get Jackson Holiday, you can have Bro Anthony. Like, that's fine.
But like,
but you're not getting
the trade has to exist
within reason. I don't think I would trade Anthony, Meyer, or Teal this offseason.
I think
those are the only three.
I think that's right. So I would say that for them, as far as like guys they should trade, and two contradictory thoughts.
Can I go back to one thing? Here's a fun one. Who would you have fourth if you were making like a trade? Like, I would prefer they don't trade this list. Who would you have fourth?
I mean, in theory, it's the ranking, but
I don't think it is.
Are you about to say Cespedes?
Yeah, I think I would. I think I would put him 4
over Blaze.
Yeah, I don't Blaze.
Well, because what I think it is, and I think the reason you would say that, and I think that I'm feeling the same way in my head.
It's the unknown.
Well, it's the unknown, and it's the value the player has today in a trade,
correct,
versus what they could be.
Yeah, the delta there is pretty massive for Cespedes.
It's a huge delta.
Because the reports are very interesting. I'll just say that. Like, people who've seen him are coming away very impressed.
It's not often you see a guy ranked 10th in a system that's this good coming out of the DSL.
Correct. But he's like, we don't know what he is. He's not played in America in games yet. We just don't know what he is. But that's the exact reason is what the potential is there enough that I would feel less comfortable dealing him than some of the other guys ahead of him in the rankings right now.
Sure. As far as like guys they should move,
I mean, I don't like that exercise.
I don't like that concept because, and the thing is, it's like on the one hand, we used to give Dombrowski credit for trading guys at the peak of their value. Yeah. Right. But at the same time, it's like when we talk about this as like outsiders, not within the game, I feel like a lot of time there's like, they ought to move this guy. He's got these problems. Like Rafael,
everyone knows that.
Like everyone knows.
Well,
like,
I think
scout these guys.
The best example in the system right now is Bobby Dahlbeck. Everyone is like, you should trade Bobby Dahlbeck. They should have moved him when they could have got something for him.
What could
there's a reason they didn't. Like there's a reason no one traded for him this season. You know, like everyone, if you see a player and you think he has these warts or these issues, it's most likely that other teams have seen the same thing. So it's hard to play that exercise of who should they sell at their peak value, etc. I think, it just all depends on who matches up with teams. or with the team it all depends on who's the player trying to get and who matches up well with what they're looking for. And it's hard to say that without knowing going into specific deals, which obviously we don't know what they're talking about or the guys they're discussing with other teams right now.
Mm-hmm. And then our last email for this episode is from Rajiv, who asks 2 questions. First, do you think Brian Mata and Bobby Dahlbeck survived the offseason on the 40-man roster? I mean, I guess it depends what you mean by offseason, right? Like, do you mean they're in camp or do you mean they're on the opening day roster? I think those are 2 very different questions.
Yeah. I don't think it's hard because like Dahlbeck is such an interesting case because
he's got
I don't think he has. Well, that's the and I feel bad for him, but that's his like curse. It's like a blessing and a curse in the sense that, yes, you're going to be on a 40-man, but you're probably not going to be in the majors because you have options.
Well, but that said, Ian, like if he were made a free agent tomorrow, is he getting a major league deal?
Probably not.
Like he's getting a minor league deal with an NRI.
He'll get that right. Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's also why if I were the Red Sox, like he's the type of guy you would sign for that spot anyway.
Sure.
Like you want a guy with options. Like I would
you
rather
prefer him not to be on the 40-man, but
right. But I don't think you're getting a guy as good as him without like, I don't know. It's just such a weird case. Because he's a great depth player. Like, but yeah, I think Dahlbeck will still be around in some capacity just because he has that final option. Mata, who knows? I mean, he has to make the major league team, and it's a numbers game, and it's just I think we haven't talked about it yet. If you look at who's on the staff right now and what they're projected to add, the numbers are tight for getting someone like Mata in, barring significant injuries.
It's not even if they acquire 2 pitchers, not even starting pitchers, 2 pitchers. Mata is not making this roster without someone being hurt.
Yeah,
it's the math. They'd have to send someone like Brennan Bernardino to AAA, which they're not going to do.
They're 20 year better relievers.
20 year like he wouldn't have a lefty. It's like right. It's because unless they move someone, right? Because the reason I say they have their 13 is it's like Houck is going to be on the major league pitching staff. Cutter Crawford's going to be on the major league pitching staff. Garrett Whitlock is going to be on the major league pitching staff. Who knows what the role is? But
that's the wild card. Is like, could they move? Do you package someone like Houck, Duran, Houck, and Rafaela for an upgraded starter or something like that? Right. Or I think the one way you could see Mata in, because I think Isaiah Campbell has options, is maybe it's those 2 are pitching for one spot and whoever.
Well, no, Campbell starts in AAA too if you sign 2 guys.
Oh, did you have him? Okay, no.
Yeah, because here's the thing. Well, so here's the numbers, right? If you go into the year, you sign 2 guys, so that's 1-2. You got a 13-man pitching staff. Okay, so we're counting here: Bayo, Sale, Crawford, Pivetta, Houck. Gets you to 7. Okay, we agree that all those guys are there if healthy. Jansen, Martin, Winkowski, Whitlock, Bernardino, Schreiber gets you to 13. If you sign 2 guys.
Yeah,
now maybe
right.
maybe in camp Schreiber looks like crap or something.
But still, you're not going to project that right now. Yeah,
you're not going to send Schreiber to AAA to keep Mata.
It's a tough numbers game for Mata.
Yeah,
but
so
I also think
he's.
But it's also, I think, a situation where if Mata lasts the offseason he's just going to be, it's going to be a straight up, you're pitching for your job in camp. Like,
no question.
If you throw the ball well, they'll find a way to get him on the roster.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
So because he does have the talent where if he shows the ability that we think he can show when he's healthy, you figure it out. And you're like, whether it be, as you said, like, you trade Schreiber, you do something, you find a way to get him on the roster if he shows any flashes of what we've seen from him in the past. But
or you trade a Whitlock, Whitlock's on a pretty team friendly
right
deal.
But that's what I mean. You move someone to get him on because it's the core. It's you get him on the roster, but you also get something by trading whoever you did to make room for him. But that's all on him. He's going to have to show that ability.
And the second question Rajiv has, and I think I know who you would say for this, do you guys have an under the radar free agent target that hasn't been talked about? He says, mine is Lourdes Gurriel. Let me know what you think. You had mentioned Nick Senzel last episode as someone who could potentially be a fit.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's a fit, but he's not that exciting. Like he's more like a bench guy. Gurriel is an interesting one. I'm not sure where he plays is the issue. I guess he could play like left field /DH. So you kind of platoon him with Yoshida, which that could make some sense.
Here's the thing is that in order to have an under the radar free agent signing, they're going to have to move guys. Like it takes more than just adding someone to this roster. Cause it's like, it's what do you do if you trade Verdugo, right? It's what do you do if you are committing to playing Yoshida at DH in like 75% of his plate appearances? What are you doing for the outfield, right? But like third base is set, shortstop is set, first base is set, catcher, at least starting catcher is probably set. I've seen a lot of Mitch Garver, which is, I don't know how I feel about Mitch Garver. I don't know what you think. The fit is there, Ian.
So you're saying, is he the third catcher or
Garver probably becomes a problem? See, the thing with Garver is he pushes Yoshida to left field most of the time because he's probably doing a lot of DH.
Yeah.
And he's like your second catcher, and you probably move on from McGuire at that point, although they tendered him. So
I would have said Nick Martinez actually probably would have been a pretty good one, but he would have been a good one. I would love for them to sign Jorge Soler just to see him hit at Fenway. I think that would be incredible to theater. I think he could hit 50 home runs and it would be kind of awesome to watch.
Yeah.
I'm looking at the free agency. Oh, okay. Here's one. I can't remember if we talked about it on the last episode. I would be really interested if they went after Robert Stevenson and we're just like, we're going to make our bullpen insane and just add Stevenson to like Martin and Jansen and just have 3 absolute monsters at the back of your bullpen.
That'd be cool.
Because Stevenson, after he went to the Rays, was absurdly good, like borderline top 10 reliever in all of baseball good. And I'd be really interested.
Prospect.
Yeah. Yep. He had a bunch of injuries, but I would be really interested in seeing what he could do in the Red Sox bullpen. So maybe that's one.
I like it. All right. Well, thank you all for the emails. Again, it's podcast@soxprospects.com. Hit us up. We'll be doing another episode next week, probably, especially depending if stuff happens in Rule 5. If Rule 5 stuff happens, email us your questions quick, so we can get them on that show and maybe deal with them there. But otherwise, I think we're going to wrap it up. So thank you all for listening. Thank you to Ian. Thank you for our patreon.com/Sox Prospect supporters at all levels. In this episode, we want to specifically shout out Jeff Harwood, Jimmy Mountain, Dusty G, Michael Murphy, Pavel, Jordan Shabbat, Nicholas Staropoli, Mike Kawano, and Chris Bollier. Thank you all for your support. Thank you to the Ludlow Thieves for our intro and outro music. All the money, you can listen to them wherever it is that you listen to music. Thank you to, are you waving to me?
I had one more thing I wanted to add. I was going to wait till you were done with it.
Fine.
It was just going to be that if you're interested in learning more, I should have mentioned this in the rankings, but we updated the scouting reports for the top 30 guys in the system.
Heck yeah.
So if you're interested in seeing kind of the up-to-date version of, and it a lot of it reflects why they're the up and down movement. There's a lot of tweaks in there. So a lot was put into those top 30. We're working on the 31 to 60 right now. It's just a longer process in the off season, but check out the top 30. Those reports are updated with additional information, scouting notes, a bunch of good stuff that I think you'll like. So check those out on the website.
Yeah, if you go to soxprospects.com/scouting, that brings you to our scouting log, and you can see, based on when reports were updated. Great point, Ian. Yeah, we should have mentioned that earlier.
Yeah, I just remembered that. But yeah, that was because we did this was a pretty thorough going through of the top 30.
Yeah, I was doing a lot of changes, inputting these from my in-laws' couch on Thanksgiving. Literally, the meal is being put on the table, and I'm like publishing a last couple of reports.
But yeah, well, a lot went into these. A lot of conversations with scouts. A lot of looking at the data. A lot of like looking over my notes from the season. So. Yep. These are for a lot of the guys, stuff. This is where we're going to be for the off season. So take a look.
Yep. And Ian does the heavy lift on these. He did a great job on them. So and like I said, okay, so where were we? I think we were on Twitter/X/Instagram. You can follow Ian at Ian Cundall. That's IANCUNDALL. Follow me at SP Chris Hatfield, and follow the site at Sox Prospects on the platform formerly known as Twitter, Instagram. I think
Blue Sky and Threads too. Are we on both?
I think we've claimed it on those. I'm on all those too, I think.
Yeah,
so
I think
not that I'm posting anything yet, but
no, just
we're there.
But we're there
if things blow up. So cool. All right. Well, thank you all for listening. Hope you all had a great Thanksgiving. Happy December. Let's hope something happens at the winter meetings. Thanks for listening, everybody.